Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Jake Horne. Jake is the founder and CEO of the Student Compass. The Student Compass provides personalized mentorship for students, academic and personal growth spanning secondary school, college, and young adulthood. His services include gap year programs, academic mentorship, college planning and application assistance, career mentorship, and character trait and personality assessments. You can find Jake on LinkedIn by searching Jake Horne, or by emailing him at jakehorne8216@gmail.com, or by going to his website, thestudentcompass.com. Hello, Jake. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Well, Olivia, this is just swell. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited because with the change in colleges nowadays and really the opportunities that we all have, I'm really excited to dive into everything covering this topic, and you're the perfect person to have on to discuss this. But before we dive into all of that, I want to ask you, to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Jake Horne?
Yes, well, this is a loaded question, so thank you. I asked it because it's my particular take with that particular term, success, in the United States has been that success it equals wealth acquisition. So it's in some kind of enterprise, and that's great. It's wonderful, except that people who accumulate wealth aren't necessarily thriving. And so I focus on the word thriving, which may include success, but it also includes, having meaning and purpose in your life, and kind of balancing the two, so that in essence you're doing what you love, but you're also living well, comfortably, and you feel fulfilled, and that's throughout your whole life. And that's the word I focus on, is thriving. But success is okay.
So for you, I love how you mentioned thriving and fulfillment, because it is really important to be able to encompass that area of actually feeling fulfilled in what you're doing, and understanding that fulfillment can look different at different points or in different sectors of your life, right? Personally being fulfilled versus professionally being fulfilled, and thriving in those areas. So, Jake, you have had a journey yourself, and I want to touch upon that and your own journey a little bit prior to getting into what led you to starting the Student Compass, because you are a very smart individual. You went to Harvard yourself, and a lot of people look at Harvard as one of the pinnacle universities to go to. And you are now really working with students after all these years on thinking about how they can level personal experiences, and not just in the college setting, to really thrive and be fulfilled short-term and long-term. So what was it like, your journey going to Harvard and then going from that ideal that so many individuals have college-wise to what you're doing now?
Okay, well, that's a great question, and I could spend the whole day doing this, but I won't. So I had a very traditional education. I was privileged enough to go to private schools. I was able to be sort of the top of the pile all the way along, got accepted to Harvard, and went off. And this was a while ago. And so, to date myself, it was during the Vietnam War. So that's a long time ago. And so I started off, and Harvard's an exciting place. It's wonderful, brilliant people, but it's also vibrant, and it's also confusing. And ultimately, there was so much political turmoil when I was there. I couldn't kind of manage it. I mean, I was taking courses, I was doing moderately well, and then sinking, because it began to not make sense to me why I was there. And so I decided to take a leave of absence, and they permitted me to do that. And the leave of absence actually was a 6-year leave of absence. which was an awfully long time. And if you ask my wife, she said, you're mad to do that. But anyway, I eventually went back and graduated from Harvard. But the upshot is that during that 6 years, I stepped out into the world. And up until that point, I was very much within a silo. I was very much in this very confined sort of perspective of the way the world works. I'm a white Anglo guy. I mean, that's pretty small. That's ridiculous, actually, because you have no sense of really how the world works. So when I took off, I literally stuck my thumb out and I hitchhiked around all of North America, through Central America, went to Europe, and I picked up work along the way. I met some amazing people, took my time to think. I really needed time to make sense of what my relationship is or was with the world, what my purpose was, or how I was going to accentuate and activate that the meaning of my place in the world. And if I, frankly, if I'd had a mentor to talk with, it would have helped a lot. So I had to figure it out myself. I eventually went back, graduated from Harvard, and then had a series of small alternative energy businesses. Eventually became a teacher at a school for students who have what's called neurodivergence, which is a fancy word for dyslexia. Really bright, interesting people. And I ended up learning a lot about how the mind works, how people make decisions, what are the impulses. So I got to dig deep into the process of cognition and comprehension and understanding the world. That eventually morphed into me deciding to teach, teach and also to start a gap year business. Because it seemed to me that if I had taken a gap year and I had really focused on doing and thinking about certain things that were important and observing the world and developing new perspectives, it would have made a tremendous difference in terms of my education at Harvard. Because there's so much, these liberal arts schools are remarkable. There's so much there that they have to offer if you are ready to interact and receive it. I was very much, as most kids are today, in what's called a transactional relationship with the school, which means I sit there, the teacher tells me what to know, or what to think and write down. I take a test based on that, and that's what education is. The fact of the matter is, you really have to take it a step further, and you have to engage with the ideas, which really opens up a whole new world of what thinking is, what conversation is, what debate is, what critical thinking is, all those kinds of things. So anyway, that's I eventually graduated from Harvard, ended up getting a couple masters, and looking for my success.
And for you, I think one of the really interesting things that you brought up there too is that it was really your journey that shaped you, and understanding that not everything in life is this transactional occurrence, because so many of us, you're right, we go to school, whether it's kindergarten all the way up to high school, college, beyond, and it's really become a framework of, okay, do this assignment, get it right, do it this way, or you get points off, right? Not really thinking about how to actually solve it, memorize this content, and be able to regurgitate it back, right?
Right.
To get that right answer.
Yeah,
and I've seen so many students when I was in college, when I teach, that if you put it in a situational atmosphere and go, okay, how are you going to apply it in this situation? They're deer in headlights, because they're not learning the information to actually sit there and be able to apply it to different situations. They're learning it to pass the test and keep moving on. Right. So for you, as you also work with students in a lot of different capacities, I want to also dive in first to this idea and premise of gap year, because we've seen it more, I should say, become more of a conversation since COVID hit. I think COVID really changed the pulse on this idea of taking a gap year, really going out to explore what you're looking for. But it is still something that can be overwhelming, because it's not the norm that people hear about as an option still. And so for you, as you talk to students, as you work with parents and really start to engage in that conversation of, is taking a gap year the right fit for you? How do you kind of navigate that with them, especially while trying to go, okay, even though your school might be telling you you can't do this, it is really the best fit for you?
So the world has changed a lot since I was in college. The days of going to college, getting a degree, getting a job, and being in the job forever, that's gone by the board. And ultimately, kids are going through 4 years of college, spending, depending where they go to school, an incredible amount of money, or they're in debt up, to the tops of their eyeballs, and they're coming out and stepping off the edge of, after graduating from college, off a cliff, because they've had no actual practical experience about what it's like to navigate the world. And every single day of an adult's life, all those discipline silos that you experience while you're in college are discrete, and the linkages between them are not amplified. They're not demonstrated, and you have no practice in the space to actually apply them. And so you step off, and you don't know how to really think critically. In reality, you don't really know how to be creative. In reality, you don't know how to blend the two. In reality, and as a result, you're spinning your wheels. If you can find work, it may be a first job, but you've got to keep on building out those skills, because those skills are very, very different than they were and have been historically. Businesses are looking for, and ventures are looking for, very different skills, because it's really it's a thinking cohort that these businesses are looking for. Very often, those kinds of skills, which are called soft skills, are really the primary skills. And so ultimately, when I talk to parents about this, because they typically come to me first anyway, I said, look at, firstly, is what's the hurry? Your child has applied to college, they've gotten into college. They can take a year. Let them step back, take a deep breath, because they've been in school for 14 years. What do they know? They don't know anything except their community, their school, and maybe summer camp or something. But it's not much. And if you're going to take on the world, you really have to have much broader perspective, and you have to have practice, because the way the brain works is through practice and repetitive practice, making mistakes, correcting those mistakes, applying them, building, developing more confidence, more control, the ability to listen. All these sort of soft skills are powerful in this new world we're living in. So ultimately, the gap year would really be, for the vast majority of these kids, the very first time when they can leave home, go off into the big wide world, independent of their parents or their community, and step into these novel communities, these novel places, in different places around the world, immerse in that. And in that process, you're constantly negotiating with, the circumstances about what to do, how to think about it, how to solve the problem. How do I, what do I do to get this information? And then you're working, or you're involved in the community in some particular way. So you're developing a much broader understanding of the different perspectives of people from different cultures and different societies. And in a global society that we live in, and companies are looking for people who understand the world, this is powerful stuff. So 1 year, one gap year is powerful, a powerful experience, because then you can take it to college and actually use it. You can be not transactional, you can actually be transformative, and you are your own self-advocate. So, I'm at a point now, and I'm hearing it from more and more independent research organizations, that taking gap years really has real power, particularly in the state of the world we are now, because with this generation, and I work primarily with Gen Z kids, with this generation, they've had so little experience because their parents generally won't let them go out and play. They're all doing this, this extra, uh, experiential work, which has to do with, can I get better playing the violin, or become a good chess player. But the fact of the matter is, they're not out playing, interacting with their peer group. So they're losing all that opportunity for conversations, for negotiations, for failures, for heartbreak, for success. I mean, all these things, that's all part of what life's all about. If you haven't done it, you're you're a deer in the headlights. So.
And I think it's something too, and I love how you said stopping transactional and become transformative, because it is so important to be able to bring those experiences to the table. You reminded me, as you were talking about all this too, of my experience. I went back to get my MBA. I went to school, left, worked for 6-7 years in professional sports, and then I went back and got my MBA. And there were certain experiences I had working in different roles within professional sports and at that caliber that the kids sitting next to me had no idea. And we were sitting in a classroom, a finance class. And again, I'd seen some people's income. I'd worked having to teach some of these athletes about saving and this and that. And they're bringing up budgets and return on investments and this and that. And the teacher asked the question, and no one could answer it. And I go, well, wouldn't this be useful in this situation outside of the classroom? Like, when this situation comes up, is this how you would apply it? And he goes, that's a great way to apply it. And everyone's like, what are you even talking about? We're going to have to think about that. And I'm like, oh no. Like, this is because you're going right from undergrad to graduate and don't understand how certain corporations are trying to leverage things. Or once you're living on your own, you have to be able to leverage some of this information to make informative decisions. So I 100% agree with you. And I think, again, we're seeing more and more data of people going, gap year can teach me so much more in a condensed period of time that can keep my perspective on things. So for you, what is the process like once someone has decided to start working with you on, taking that gap year, or deciding whether different colleges are the right thing, or the whole experience through the student compass? What do you kind of focus in on and see what way to pivot or move?
Yeah. So firstly, I had to build a rapport with these kids, because as a mentor, they have to be able to trust me. I'm taking, it's going to sound odd, I'm taking them away from their parents' influence. Their parents participate, but the kids talk to me, and because I have no, there are no triggers with me. Mm-hmm. And so we spent some time getting to know each other. And then we start talking about values. What do they value in life? And we spend a lot of time talking about what's important to them, what's meaning, what are the things they hold close to their heart. And then we start talking about the idea of, well, what's the purpose? Well, how would you play that out? What are the various different ways, and what would make you feel as if you're doing something that had real merit? And and this whole business of meritocracy, again, I steer them away from making money. I hate to say it, anybody can make money, but the fact of the matter is, you can make money, but maybe you could be miserable. And often, and I've worked with enough families, enough kids to know that, there are plenty of people out there with money who are not happy, really not happy. So having some money is important, but the bigger thing is, do you feel as if you are doing something that is important to you, that makes you feel like you're contributing to your world? And there's lots of research about how people, happiness and a sense of accomplishment and connecting with people who need and are looking for that connection and help and support and engagement. And the interesting thing about the pandemic is we had this enormous separation between the people in the teachers and the adults in the school and those people that those kids typically would have conversations with or could have conversations with being fractured, that seeing their friends and having these interesting sort of gossipy conversations that are so really incredibly important for kids, that being fractured, and this problem with not being physically present with people that you care about or you like, and being able to read their body language, to be able to understand and observe. These are all really important things. And these kids this was all sort of ripped away because of this, the pandemic. So we have an enormous amount of people who are lonely. We have enormous number of people, kids, who are, and particularly young women, who are struggling with identity. And so there's a lot of turmoil with these kids, and they need to have time to sit down in a non-academic environment where they can gain this sort of perspective of like, who am I? What do I really want, as opposed to what my parents want, or my community expects of me, or my school expects of me. I can't tell you the number of kids who come back and say, I really didn't want to do that, but I felt I had to. I had an obligation, and I wasted all these years. So, I think that it is, the gap year is one of the more singular opportunities for kids to take a break, refresh themselves, and to be able to make more sense and kind of flip their heads and make more sense about really how this is for me. This is my thing. And I want to feel as if I'm doing something that has some value. And so, personal value personally to me, and also to the people I care about, and in a greater sense, the world. Now, on top of that, you have this stuff that's rolling down toward these forces of transformations, tech, massive tech change. You've got all sorts of, the AI monster, issues of ethics and business transformations. Potential, it's going to sound awful, but nuclear war, global fractionalization, and nationalism, globalism. All these things are rolling and rolling and rolling in a way that is very, very different than has ever happened before. Humans have always experienced change. Technology has always been part of the human experience, but the combination of the rapid morphing of technology and its complete uptake, and beginning with the smartphone, this almost universal uptake of this system, which literally is addictive, and it takes over your brain. It takes over the way you perceive the world. You step into a silo and you stay in the silo, and so you're missing all those natural social conversations and those interactions, and you're in this little silo, and schools can do very little about that unless they get, they start taking phones away. Bring the flip phone back. That's swell, but forget this other thing, which also gets in the way of kids learning, because they're constantly distracted. And when it comes to attention and attention span, the phone is the absolute worst thing in the world, because it's always pulling you toward it.
And I want to dive into that more, because I've had lots of conversations on this phone topic and really being present. So I love that you brought this up, because I think it's something, whether you're 12 or 60, we're seeing more and more because of smartphones and different apps that are drawing you in, right? Like Instagram videos, TikToks. I'm not a TikTok person at all, but those videos can really captivate some people, and they could end up scrolling for a really long time. But as you brought up, it really does take you away from an environment, from an experience. And also, I have personally seen, and my friends make fun of me because I'm the one that if you start texting me and we start having conversation and I'm reading this and I'm like, A, this could be handled in 5 minutes, or we're going to go roundabout to like talk about this. Let's just get on a FaceTime or phone call. My friends know there's a 95% chance I'm about to just pick up the phone at any second in that
Right.
conversation and call them. And a lot of people will go, oh, just text me. Like, why are you calling? And I go, because if we're getting into a really in-depth conversation, you're not going to be able to read my tone in a text. If you get heated about it, you're going to read your own tone out of that, and it could be misperceived. You can't read body language. And I think even the knowledge and expertise on emotional intelligence is going down because we're not in the environments to practice this tools and really hone them for our own toolboxes to be able to understand and read the environment we're in. So for you, as you've looked at the society and individuals around you, and whether it's personally and seeing people older or, working with young students trying to navigate their skill sets, what are some things that you see going on that you wish, hey, let's really double check the effect this is having?
Well, I mean, anecdotally, I know it is. I mean, I talk with, I've worked with kids who are stuck in their rooms, that are, drop out of college for whatever reason and are literally stuck in their rooms and they're glued to the screen. And they start, if you take them away from the screen away from them, they start hyperventilating. Their anxiety level goes right through the ceiling. I mean, I've had enough of those kinds of conversations with kids, and they know intrinsically, they know that it's not good. It's not healthy, but that's all they've known. I mean, literally, they are digital natives, and that's all they've really ever known is how to connect with the world through their phones. But again, there's a lot of research coming out. There's a philosopher, Haidt is his name, who is just come out with this wonderful piece on, the way the cell phones actually inhibit the ability for students to be able to pay attention, either because they're actively doing something or they're anticipating something on the phone, or they're itching for something, and so it impacts profoundly. Neurologically, it impacts the way the brain wires up and the way the brain receives information and the way the brain codifies it in memory. So we're seeing profound changes, not just in school performance, and I have a problem with the way schools actually do that, but at the same time in the emotional balance that these kids have. And if you're emotionally wrought up, if you're emotionally anxious, you're seeing trauma, you're seeing mayhem, you're seeing gossip and mean stuff happening all the time, and you're always in a state of high anxiety, you're not going to learn well, and you're not going to receive and perceive the world well, because your brain is so wrought with these other emotions, which are powerful emotions. These people who design these systems, these ping systems that give you shots of dopamine, they know what they're doing, and because it's business, and they were very successful as a model. So again, I can get into a whole conversation about technology is great as long as it is, and then it isn't. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question the way you like it, but anyway,
you are giving some insight, and I want to dive into this a little bit more too, because one of the things you just brought up is the shot of dopamine we all get, and also the fact that when we are getting triggered or we have all these strong negative emotions that are going on around us, it really then ends up pushing negativity and that negative mindset forward in different interactions we have because we're so used to seeing it. So for you, when you do these assessments in individuals and you're seeing they are having these feelings of pressure or, feeling triggered by certain things that are going on around them, how do you kind of bring that up with an individual of going, hey, do you realize you're really seeing it this way, but it is more positive than you're seeing it, but you have been I don't want to use the word program, but kind of like into this module of mindset because of different experiences you've had.
Sure. So I'm not a psychologist, so I mean I can't give you a pure response, but I do know that with all of these kids I work with, I do have to spend some time getting them to a point where they will talk with me comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start talking about those kinds of things as well. By the way, just so you know, when these kids go off on a gap year, they don't have their phones, or they have flip phones. And so they're actually, for the first time in their lives, they experience this thing, this transformative experience of, I don't need this thing. But it takes about a week for them to get out. It's like it's being like addicted to a drug. It takes you a while to get it out of your system because there's so many other interesting things to do. And so these kids are off meeting other people from around the world, having incredible conversations, which adolescents and teenagers and young adults have always had. Sitting around the campfire in North Australia, having this incredible conversation with somebody from Lithuania and somebody from Ecuador and somebody from Estonia. I mean, it's like it's wonderful, it's powerful, and it's fun. And once these kids have an opportunity to do that, they begin to realize that they do have some power. They do have the ability, some agency to be able to make these decisions, and that they can live without this sort of thing that has been controlling their lives. But for some of them who come to me, they just want to go. The phone has nothing to do with it. Technology, I mean, maybe it does. It wears them out. Okay, but they know the world's a much bigger place, and it's much more interesting, and they want to get out there and experience it. And that was always the case, at least in my generation, always the case. As soon as you became 16, you got your driver's license, you disappeared, you took off, you were gone, And this generation of kids literally are tied to their home by every possible mechanism that exists, because parents are so afraid that their kid's going to be harmed in some particular way. And actually, as awful as it feels now in this world, this is actually, in many ways, a much safer world than it's ever been. I know that sounds weird, but there are lots of places in the world you can go where you're perfectly safe, or reasonably safe, but you're practicing good judgment. You're practicing being confronted by circumstances and situations, and you have to deal with them, and then you deal with the consequences. Your parents can't come and rescue you. There's no need to rescue you, because virtually nobody's in that situation where they have to be rescued. But they get over the anxiety of being out there on their own. And I don't mean to suggest that everybody's out there literally on their own. They're usually with other group of young guys and gals who are from all over the world, who are just wanting to feel the world and understand the world in a very different way. So
I want to bring something up, because I know probably most parents listening to this right now want me to ask you this question. How do you get your clients, those students, to give up their smartphone for a flip phone? Because especially in this environment right now, I could only imagine how easy sometimes those conversations could be, but how difficult and hard, because they like their iPhones. They want to be so attached in that way.
Well, I mean, I think that it happens in two ways. Either they're in a particular kind of experiential program where they just aren't allowed to have them. And usually when I start with kids, I want them in that kind of environment, so they have some mentors around them. They're in a different culture. They have people to whom they can talk with, but they're in a new culture, and they're immersed in it. And those phones aren't, you can't have them except for once a week maybe, at most. But also I've got kids who just simply say, I'm having too much fun. I don't need this thing. I'm with these incredible people having a great time. People, I never thought the world looked like this. Well, the phone becomes less of a influence, and breaking away from the community, breaking away from that sort of cohort that you've been living with, as great as they were as friends, you're doing your own thing for the first time, and you've got something to do, something to prove that to yourself that you have the capacity to be independent. And that's what everybody should be trying to do when they're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I mean, boys are 28, but I mean, it's like, it takes a long time. But to become an independent person, you've got to go through this rite of passage. That's what I think of the gap year. It's this experience which is unique to you, in which you prove to yourself and your community that you can go and do things successfully based on your own capacities. And you come back a much more confident person. You come back a person who has much a deeper sense of who they are and what they can do and what they need to work at. And to go at it not because their parents are pushing them, but because they know what they need to do for themselves, because it's their life. And that's the transformation. It's going from being a kid to being an adult. And the gap year is a great place to start.
And I think it's so important to, as you said, having that transformation, being able to understand different environments, see too a world where you can go out and sit outside and enjoy nature and what the environment is truly like, and also learn from the people in that community. One of the things I really loved that my parents did growing up was twofold. They never left us behind on a trip. They always took us. And this second was, as we got older, right? Once I was 10 and I was the oldest, we started traveling outside the country. My parents each knew an additional language, but they took us, and it wasn't like always the really nice environments. If we went, for example, my dad went to medical school in Grenada when the invasion hit. So we recently went back to Grenada a few years ago, and it's a very small island. They don't have any street lights, but we really spent 10 days there, seeing what it was like for when he went there and talking to people about the invasion, how things have changed, and just doing things with the community. Where we went to, I've gone to Italy and gone all over and learned different skills from the people. Okay. And immerse yourself in the culture. And I think that has been one of the things that has helped me really understand different people's perspectives, is saying, okay, I'm not sitting here and reading it out of a book or not walking a mile in their shoes. I've been to third world countries where they don't have running lights. They don't have running, bathrooms. You're living in a bate for, time. And if you have to go to the bathroom or shower, you're going in the lake or the water, right, nearby. And I think that really shows you what certain people have to do in order to survive, but the kindness people can have as well. And you brought this up of, this world, because of everything we hear on the news, can seem so negative, and there's this daunting moment that something's going to happen at any time, right? But in reality, when you go to certain environments, they can be the nicest people and be so grateful to even be able to spend time with you. And that town could be the safest town to be in because everyone is just feeling so lucky, so upbeat, so bright. So for you as well, I want to ask you, as you work with parents and start this conversation about exploration and them having their own wariness of, okay, is this safe? Or, as my parents, they are always looking out for my best interest. It doesn't matter how old I get. They're like, text me when you get home. Text me, they just want to make sure that I'm okay. How do you kind of reassure them throughout the process that it's okay? This is a journey. Your child will be safe.
So the primary conversations I have are with the student. There's no, and I make it clear to the parents that I'm working with your child. but we can talk anytime you want. If I'm happy to do that. Um, I have to tell them that I would never put them in a situation where there's any true danger. They may feel uncomfortable, and that's good. They're supposed to feel uncomfortable, because how are they ever going to learn if there isn't a challenge, if there isn't something they have to figure out? But the point is that certainly over the years I've been doing this, which is 30 years actually, I've never had a problem. I mean, kids go out, parents let them go. They are all they do. Parents are paying, but that's all they're doing. That's all they're allowed to do. But the kids are going off, and within a very short period of time, they hear back from the kids that it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some parents are more anxious than others, but I have these conversations about, look at, if you're hearing from your kid that they are feeling unsettled, they've got people there with them who I know, who are going to be there to help them understand what's happening in front of them in a different culture. They're never going to grow up unless they have the opportunity to experience awe, to experience novelty, to experience discomfort, and you, parent, have to let it go, because your kid is never going to grow up. You're going to be having somebody living in your basement for the next 40 years unless you let this happen. And I promise you, your child's going to come back a young adult with a different way of looking at their world. And it happens universally. And so, I mean, that's my feedback, certainly from my clients. But there is a leap of faith here for parents. I mean, they have to understand, at least intellectually, that this is a smart thing to do, and it's timely, because what's happening with their kid and the environment their child is growing up in is not a happy one. Mm-hmm. And most of the kids I'm working with are dealing with issues of stress. I mean, nobody's comfortable. I've got a bunch of kids at Harvard who you would think would be on the top of the pile. They'd be happy as clams. They're all neurotic. They're all a mess. And they don't know what's going to happen. So, I mean, you're even, people who've had all the opportunity in the world, kids who have had all the opportunity in the world, because they've had no practice. And literally, they've had no practice. They don't know how to interpret it. They don't know how to interpret the world. They don't know how to manage the world. And as a result, they're all on medication. It's a terrible situation. And in the meantime, you've got these forces that are coming down the pike, which they're going to have to deal with as adults, which are big, they're massive. And so they need to develop, much deeper levels of confidence, ethical understanding, sense of optimism, develop broader perspective. They have to be able to persevere. I mean, all these kinds of things, and think critically, and particularly with this technology, which is so sketchy, which can be so great, but it's so sketchy. You can't take anything at face value. You've got to become a thoughtful, reflective, educated individual. So a lot of it's cajoling. Not every parent will buy it. No kid will go off to college, and then I'll get a call, the following year saying, maybe my son needs to take a gap year. But it is it's a unique time, and I wish schools were much better. The curriculum was much better designed to teach the curriculum through an experiential platform, so these kids could actually apply it and understand it, and that it wasn't just transactional, but the kids were interacting much more, and were permitted to and feel comfortable saying things, making mistakes, being supported in making those mistakes, and saying, go back and let's sort it through, and being encouraged to be brave and to be courageous and thoughtful.
And I think it's something too, and you kind of brought this up, of turning around a year or two into college and going, okay, I need this. I didn't realize, I thought, I said no, but now I'm really realizing the answer was yes. It came to mind a good friend of mine, and she just graduated college. She did high school, went right into undergrad, went out of undergrad, didn't get into the master's program she wanted, so did a different one. Then from there, figured out it wasn't what she wanted. She ended up, long story short, doing 4 master programs because she didn't have the time and didn't take the time. And I kept like going, as your friend, I want to hit you upside the head, like pause for a second and think about what you want. And instead of it was like, well, I got to get this degree because then I'll be doing something good. I'll be making that impact. I'll be doing what society's telling me. And I'm like, hold up though. The amount of debt you're getting yourself into because you just feel like you need to go, 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 instead pause and say, hey, this might not be the norm, but I need to take the pause to actually go, what do I like? What do I don't like? What experiences am I going to tie to? And that's really what you just touched upon, is this aspect of going, you can go, go, go and put yourself in all this debt, not really get these life lessons, and like kind of be like my friend where you go to, you're ending up in school for almost 20 years straight, 20 plus years straight. Or you can take the time to go, okay, I'm going to take that gap year. I'm going to do some self-reflection. I'm going to go and explore and challenge my way of thinking, challenge the community I have known, and go out and see different communities and interact with different people. And I think for someone like her, for example, taking that gap year and making it known that that was an option and it was okay to do that could have saved her short term a lot of stress, overwhelming, all these different feelings, but also long term, a lot of unknown, a lot of debt, right? As we talked, you've mentioned, and just the journey of really understanding what you want to do in life. So I think,
so let me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but look, how does anybody actually really know what they want to do except through experience and through reflection? I mean, you've got to be honest. It takes practice to be honest with yourself about what it truly is that is impelling me here. And is it just keeping myself busy, or is it I see where this can go? The world is going to change. The work that's available is going to morph. So that what seems to be true today is not going to be true in 5 years. And so you have to develop these other skills. And most colleges are still not teaching this stuff. They're not working at it. High schools, vast majority aren't even coming close to it. So these kids are getting absolutely no practice at reflection. They're getting no practice at thinking deeply about who they are and what really would drive their passions. So, so there are plenty of people who are incurring debt, and they start a job and then they're laid off, and what do they have? They've got nothing. And this is happening a lot. And whereas if they had the fluidity of these skills, the ability to adapt, to be able to think forward, to be able to be a critical thinker, all this stuff is, you can transport that with you, and you can make a case for yourself, whatever the work is. So, when it used to be, I know, and I'll say this one thing which blew my mind was, at one time, you needed, for every anesthesiologist had to be in every operating theater, monitoring, the anesthesia. Now they have the technology where one anesthesiologist could monitor 5 theaters. So there goes that very high paying job for all these people who are in the pipeline who want to be anesthesiologists. I mean, nobody is secure if they think they're going to be doing the same job that they start off with. They're going to have 20 different careers.
And I will say too, and it's funny you bring this up, because my dad is an anesthesiologist, right? And as I mentioned earlier, he did medical school for a little bit in Grenada, and really made that decision to really learn skills that could, and in an environment where you don't have resources, where you don't have the option to do anything else. And now he's looking at students and young professionals, whether it's doctors or anesthesiologists, right? Because he's run trauma programs, he's been director of anesthesia, he goes in and consults, but it's one of those things where one day, for example, they lost power on the operating rooms or in the prep. I forget what he said. And the doctors looked at him, the other anesthesia person was like, what, I can't do anything. We can't, what are we, and starts pure panic. And he's like, okay, we'll use this and do that. And he's directing everyone in the room of what resources to use. And he's like, how do you not know what to do in this situation? Right. And it dawns on him, instead of learning your skills without technology, the schools are just teaching on the technology. Oh, there's this newest equipment, just use this and everything will be fine. Right. But when that newest equipment starts to malfunction, you have to be able to realize it's malfunctioning and pivot accordingly. So it is something too that he sits back and he's like, if anything goes sideways, there's such a gap with some individuals where it could be detrimental. And he has taken it upon himself to really try to teach and challenge everyone in the room, because if something goes wrong, you need those experiences. Right. Jake, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
So the name of my company is The Student Compass, and you can just actually type that into your search engine and it should come up pretty quickly, or www.thestudentcompass.com, or Jake Horne 8216 at gmail.com. And I'm happy to chat with anybody. People have a lot of questions, and I chat with a lot of people who just simply want to get an understanding, and they move on. Many move on, and I'm happy to do that, because I want people, parents, but also kids, I want them to know that they have some options, and the world is complicated, but it's also full of all sorts of incredible opportunity. You just have to be prepared for it. But knowing that schools aren't really going to prepare you for it unless you really go after it actively, you're going to be stuck and you're going to be disappointed. So.
Well, thank you, Jake, for all of your insight today. It was really informative, and I've loved this conversation.
Well, I have too. Thank you, Olivia. This has been a treat.
Thank you. And I want to go over a few of those key takeaways Jake had brought up today, because there were so many nuggets and things we should all be thinking about, whether you're a student in high school, the parent, or you're a young professional wanting to grow and really understand how to immerse yourself in an environment and really get skill sets. And one of them is, what activities are present in the world, right? So what activates your presence in the world? What gets you going every day? What really do you stand up? And Jake brought this up, and I think it's really important to take a moment back and reflect of like, what gets you moving? What gets you excited? What activates you every day? As well as you have to interact and be able to receive information. So take a step back and understand that whether you're in school, right, high school, college, a job, it isn't just about learning information, retaining it, and being able to reiterate it back, but it is, how do you perceive it? How do you actually turn that perception and be able to apply it to different situations you are in and when you need to use it, as well as stop being transactional and be transformative. I love this. This was probably one of my favorite things Jake had mentioned, because so many of us are trained on this thought, and it comes from school, I think, of, okay, I'm going to study, I'm going to pass it, and then I'll pass the test. And it's a check mark, right? And we've now, as adults, even transitioned that into networking and building relationships. It has to be a give and take for it to be successful. When in reality, that doesn't help you transform your idealisms, transform your growth. It is really just becoming a transaction. So think and challenge yourself of how you can stop doing things in your daily life as a transactional resource and become transformative, as well as practice reflection. Take a step back to also immerse yourself everywhere you are, whether that's in the grocery store and you're seeing how people interact with each other, or you're in the classroom and you're seeing someone challenged, or you're in, like Jake said, that new country and you're seeing a community, you're doing the activities that they're doing every day. You're having those conversations. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Jake Horne. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.
Well, thank you, Olivia. You too. Bye-bye.